Welcome to the Independent Artist Podcast, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. I'm Will Armstrong, and I'm a mixed media artist.
I'm Douglas Sigworth, glassblower. Join our conversations with professional working artists. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. So I'm looking into my computer screen, and I think I'm looking at my friend Will Armstrong. Actually, I'm starting to wonder if it's an AI-generated version. How can I know it's really you, Will? Come on.
I am a robot. Nice to see you, Douglas. Maybe you should ask me to identify a bridge or a traffic cone.
There you go.
I can't. By the way, those aren't motorcycles, people. I'm trying to identify motorcycle. Those are scooters, goddammit.
That's right. Let's get really clear on what we're supposed to be finding in these recaptchas. Come on.
No criticism to our sponsors, Zap, there, but it is my own personal defect that I can't seem to recognize a bridge. Is that an overpass? That's not a bridge. Is that a railroad crossing? I'm not sure.
Right. That's right. It's like, those test questions where they say if you have to think about it too long, just pick an answer and move on.
Right.
You can't do that. You can't get into your account if you don't find the exact right boxes. Try again.
I think it's on 3, I think is my my worst score. Be like, try again. Please try again. I'm like, I'm going to get locked out of my account because I can't identify a traffic cone. That's funny, Douglas. Here it is about almost 10 o'clock. We were going to get together about 9, and things kept happening. You were still in the studio, having a little studio time this morning and trying to catch some art time in before we met. I was like, well, I got time. I can run over to the coffee shop, grab some coffee, quick bite to eat. Art show world, have you ever tried to do something real fast and then you run into Jack Charney? So, I love him. He's that was amazing. I look for him every time I go to that coffee shop because our studios are in the same complex. But I look for him every time, and it's been several months since I've seen him, and I was like, man, where's Jack? And all of a sudden, the one time I'm like, I got like 30 seconds. I'm going to jump in there, grab a cup of coffee, and come back and start to talk to Douglas. But
you weren't able to go in and out incognito. You run into people and it.
Yeah, and I think, and I only know 4 people here. I don't have any. I don't have any friends here. I don't know anybody. I know. Let's see. My ex-wife and her partner. So that's 2. My kids 4. My wife. So we're up to 5. Jack, Pam Caden. I know the lovely Jennifer Caven and her husband Reese, who I adore, and Allison and Eric Antelman, and that's it.
That sounds like a tribe. This list keeps on rolling, man.
I guess.
I only know a few people.
I guess, but it's been maybe 3 weeks since I've talked to somebody besides my wife and kids, so it's been a while.
Yeah.
It's funny we talk about it. La Quinta is coming up, and our good friend Trés, who we're going to talk to again, a second parter, because I can't keep that thing down to an hour with such a. But it's too much to talk about. We still left a lot on the table.
It was so many stories, but every story he told had such meaning. So, we've got a great part 2 coming up today.
Yeah, and I really excited for you guys to hear with Helene kind of getting down into the social aspect of the work as well. So
I love that. I love that part of it.
So what's going on in your world, sir? How are you?
Well, it's pretty good. Up this morning and preparing for what's it called? Snowmageddon, they say, when we're going to gates of hell are going to unleash their weather wrath on us here in Minnesota.
Snowpocalypse. All right.
Yeah, snowpocalypse. They're saying it's going to be the worst blizzard ever in the Twin Cities. Ever in the Twin Cities.
That's insane. Yeah, I was talking to my brother-in-law last night, and he was saying that they pre-canceled school, which is...
They did. They never do that.
Never
say, tomorrow and the next day, they just said, blanket, cancel for 2 days.
Yeah.
Usually it's like, let's see what actually happens, because, they'll predict something and it might be a lot less than what they expected. But nope, they just cleared out the rest of the week for people.
Yeah, I have actually been living through that. We had an impromptu spring break, winter break for the kids, which we all kind of wanted to kill each other at the end of it. But so we had, they have scheduled parent-teacher conferences, right, on Thursday and Friday. And then you've got President's Day on Monday. So yay, it's production season. Let's have a 5-day weekend. They got 2 snow days on top of that.
They did.
2.5 snow days. So it's like 8 days of cooped up kids in the house, not doing anything, trying to, oh
Keep
my
them
God,
off
it
their
was kind of a
screens.
nightmare. I don't know. Just plug them in. Just get the extension cord and just put it in the back of their head. Just put them into the couch. It was kind of a nightmare, to be honest. I haven't gotten any work done.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That their schedules never seem to jive up with our work schedules, with creating schedules, does it? Stuff like that, everything halts, and you're a dad.
Also,
you have to focus on home.
14 and almost 13. 15, 13 is what we're looking at coming up in a couple of months. But they're well into that zone where they don't like you.
Oh, yeah. And I remember that age, the most inane thing will send them off into unstable hormones and mood swings.
At least right now, they're not choosing to hate me at the exact same time. So at least I've got like one ally that can kind of like roll their eyes at their sister and see. I'm like, yeah, you were doing that to me just like 5 seconds ago. And it's like, you can't, I don't know. Just driving them to school in complete silence is starting to wear on me. They are they've had about enough with the dad, and dad's had about enough too. So, but they're off at school and they got activities and we're good to go.
They're happier too. I mean, they're ready to be amongst their group and let the old man go do his business and leave them alone.
For sure. Yeah, old man needs to make some goddamn artwork for sure. I got shows coming up.
Well, speaking of La Quinta, I was looking on social this week, and there's a lot of great stuff going on in South Florida. It was really exciting to see all the different shows going on in the sun and the palm trees and awards. It was great.
Yeah, lots of big shows happening down in South Florida this past weekend. Lots more coming up. People driving to La Quinta, doing cross country from one point to the other. It's exciting to see, but does that ever stress you out at all when you look at, I did delete Facebook off my phone and Instagram off my phone. I started seeing all these beautiful paintings and works of art that people are creating. And to be honest, it's just starting to stress me out.
Yeah, I have my moments. Would I say maybe a month ago? When Florida first started, I was where you are with that, exactly, because I couldn't get to work and I was kind of sitting back and seeing everything else going on. But now I feel like I'm in the game.
Nice.
I'm making the pieces and I'm planning for the next one, which is Houston in a month. So I've got this renewed energy about me that is just, it's amazing. I mean, it's amazing. I know.
I can feel it.
We'll see how the editing goes, but I have cut you off a few times already this morning because I'm ready to just run with it.
I really, this past 8 days was supposed to be a big production time for me and having snow days and all this other stuff. I am, it's a lot. All of a sudden you have a lot going on, then all of a sudden you take 8 days off and you're like, yeah, you're just kind of screwed. Okay. So it just adds the pressure. I'm going away to Baltimore this coming up week next, by the time this airs. So that'll be, if it airs Monday, I'll be leaving on Wednesday to plus one it and sell some jewels and go and do whatever they're calling. They changed the name of ACC Baltimore, which they did. Yeah, what is it? American Handmade, I believe now.
Oh, okay.
Instead of American Craft Council, now it's the American Handmade Show. They're trying to do a little rebranding on that one. They have the last couple of years. This is not new news. But anyway, I'm plus wanting it with her. I'm going to go and flirt with the ladies and put some jewels on them and tell them how lovely they look and see if I can eat my weight in seafood.
Baltimore's great this time of year, so it'll be good to have that one back and head off and do the ACC
Baltimore.
Thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm excited to see my folks. They're coming up.
Oh,
you ever have people come and family come hang out in your booth?
I've had distant relatives who maybe I hadn't seen since, maybe high school, when that's the time you go to big family gatherings or whatever. And they'll show up. And so let's say 30 years have gone by and now you're 40, 50-year-olds and you're just standing there with your hands in your pocket going, yeah, mm-hmm.
Oh, what are you supposed to talk about? I haven't seen you since Hill Street Blues.
That's right.
Murphy's Law for me, though, is whenever I have one of those folks come by, it's Deadville. Like I was crushing it in St. Louis one year and had some of Susie's cousins come by who I love. They're great. I love it when they come by. This was the year that Cherry Creek was the week before. So I did Cherry Creek right into St. Louis, and I was totally picked over. And I had a couple of pieces, like kind of the garage sale art fair pieces out, if you will. You know, not quite my A game. No offense to you, Bonnie, but that's what that show's for, right? You know?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
well, I always feel like when those slow moments happen and the relatives come, I think to myself, I hope they don't think it's like this all the time. You know what I mean? I hope they think we're like actually, know what it's actually like when we're really busy and rocking it,
Well, that's the thing. I feel like also, I mean, it's nice for relatives to come see you at a really good show, but typically I feel like the relatives are always coming to see you when you're at the hearing aid festival in the Cracker Barrel parking lot, slumming it for the weekend in between A and B. It's like, this is what you do. This is not to belittle the hearing aid festival in the Cracker Barrel parking lot.
Very good show. Very good festival.
You can really just move some trinkets. That doesn't exist.
Speaking about South Florida and shows coming up, I think I'm not sure where we're at with timing, but I think next week is the big Gasparilla show, and I am so excited to see Michelle Martis's work plastered everywhere on social media and all over the place. That it's just exciting. It's exciting.
She's having a moment.
Yeah, for sure.
She's having herself a little moment right there. Her work has kind of transitioned over the last 4 or 5 years, and she's in this kind of sweet spot pocket. Yeah, that she's just kind of crushing it right now, and I think it's a terrific image for the poster. And she's a good friend of both of ours, and man, really happy for her, and really cool to see.
I love seeing that. I love seeing friends' work get so much publicity like that and be used that way. So it's awesome.
She's having a great moment, and it's well deserved. I'm looking at her schedule though, and she hasn't been to Fort Worth before. I don't think she was telling me.
Oh, wow.
She's got Fort Worth on her schedule, and I'm like, you better get ready. You better get ready.
Load it up. Load her up. I'm having a bit of a moment here out in the studio and getting back to work and blowing glass and just feeling on top of the world. And then I see the casting call for Blown Away has come up again.
Oh, are you gonna try that out again?
So we're working in the studio, and I say to Renee, "So Renee, what do you think? Casting call season 4, Blown Away." She gave me a little bit of the side eye, and she's like, "Haven't we had enough for the last year? Can we just get back to kind of normal?" I'm like, okay.
I'm with her on that. So I got to ask you something.
Yeah.
I was telling Susie about that because you sent me a list of topics that you wanted to talk about, and typically just like a keyword. Here's what, so I looked at the list and it was like casting call for Blown Away. I was like, I wonder if he's going to do that again. And her question was, why? Why would he want to do that? Yeah. What's is it the prestige? Is it the notoriety? Is it fame?
I guess where it comes down to is I have been a fan of Survivor since it started 20 some years ago. I had honestly thought when I was younger that would be something that I might want to do. And this seems to be a reality show in my wheelhouse. It's a fantasy. It isn't something I would really want to do because when you think of the logistics, time out of the studio, time away from our career, basically, to possibly embarrass myself on TV, on national exposure, no, it's bad. And the other thing is they're not really looking for it to be a real competition. I mean, they're casting characters.
Well, you're a character.
I'm a character. I realize that. But the reality of the show is they've got people on there who've been blowing glass for less than a year. They're not really casting a competition of like for Top Chef, for example, where they're trying to get them the best quality chefs and see who can be the best one at the end. They've got a handful of people who have this long experience in working with glass. And then they've got a bunch of newbies. So it isn't real. I mean, nothing in entertainment is technically real. So
yeah, that's funny that you say that. I've got a good friend that did Top Chef and then Iron Chef after that. Cool. She's an amazing chef in Richmond, Brittany Anderson. She's a good friend. But she did the first round. They were like, far and away, you win this competition if you'd remembered to plate 5 plates instead of 4. But she had a brain fart and plated 4 instead of 5. But they were like, well, this is head and shoulders above all of the rest of the food, but we can't let you win. You didn't even, one of us is hungry.
Oh.
So she got screwed there. But it was
that an elimination for her then because of that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was the final. I think that was the final. But she was good enough to make it then again onto Iron Chef. And has done a lot of the reality things, but has a couple of restaurants in Richmond, Virginia. Metzger's, which is where my folks go, treat them real well. And Brenner Pass, that's another one. If you're ever going through Richmond, those are your spots to get your reservations.
Nice.
That's it. Nice. That's an interesting topic, talking about shows and where to go. And one of my favorite things to do, we were talking to Amy Flynn a couple of weeks ago, and she was talking about the social aspect of it. One of my top things that I do is look forward to the restaurants. I'm like, oh, man, I get to eat there's like a crab cake, just dive bar in Baltimore that we go to. We're going to hit called Pete's that I'm excited to go to Pete's. It's right next to the hotel. And we're like, you want to just get a crab cake and a beer? My wife is like, absolutely. Like,
that doesn't need any persuasion on that one. It's a yes.
Yeah. I mean, are you excited do you guys get excited about that kind of stuff as far as traveling goes and your favorite spots or your favorite little carrots along the way?
Yeah. Not so much the food. I mean, we're definitely foodies. We like eating in good places.
Are you?
Yeah, we like good food. I mean, I worked at a fine dining restaurant, and so I was spoiled for many years, having very, very nice food. I mean, ultimately, we don't always like to spend the money on a $50 plate or something, but sure. I do, yeah.
No, it's interesting because I sometimes if you've spent a lot of time in, I don't know, in fine dining kind of situations, sometimes you can kind of see through it. So a lot of times I'll be like, 4 stars can be for me, or 4 or 5. It can be the dive bar with the crab cake, or it can be like I don't really want the tablecloth and I don't want the drizzle on the plate. I want the on the side of the plate. Look, it's the red dots. I don't.
You're reminding me of the movie called The Menu that was on HBO. Have you seen it? Where it goes sinister.
You know what? We did just watch that. I hated that.
You hated it? Okay.
Oh, I thought it was so dumb. It was like Scooby-Doo.
Oh, really? I didn't think that, but that's interesting you say that. What I did jive with is did you see the whole thing or did you cut out of it?
Yeah, we watched the whole thing. I thought, I really hated it.
Well, what I did like is the commentary on how these wealthy foodies can kind of manipulate what gets made for them. Like they want this narrative. And I thought this is kind of sounding parallel to the art show world where we get pushed to doing the obscure thing to appeal to the heightened sensibilities of art collectors, Interesting.
So you thought of it more of like trying to solve the foodie palate as opposed to trying to solve the artistic buyer's mind. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they want to be like the buyers, the collectors, the restaurant goers. They want to be special. They want the food that's been whipped into a foam and has no flavor, but you can create this narrative about it and make them feel good about themselves that they are so special. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes the more approachable hamburger or the hamburger, if we had the correlation to artwork that we sell on the street or that we make, you know what I mean? That there's that's looked down on.
Well, that's funny. Yeah. And my problem that I had, it's like, okay, they were trying to decide it was like a murder thing and they're trying to kill off all of the guests at this fancy restaurant. The chef has had enough with all of his clientele. And it's like, it lost me when it's like, the girl goes, well, I went to Brown on a scholarship. And they're like, well, you deserve to die. I'm like, well, wait a minute. My nephew goes to Brown. He doesn't deserve to die. It's just, I don't know. I honestly,
it did get a little over the top for sure.
I don't know. I got the metaphor right away, and then they started hammering the metaphor in, and it just seemed really one-dimensional.
Well, you're not alone with that. My wife was the same. She's like, yeah, I'm out. This movie is for you to finish. I'm going to go read a book or something. So.
Right. Well,
you and Renee are in the same boat on that one.
Yeah, about 90, I'd say 85 to 90% of the entertainment that, like, my wife and I totally jive on, but she kind of leaned over to me in the middle of that one, was like, I think this might be dumb.
The whispering, I'm guessing you were in the theater, because I don't think you whisper in your living room, do you?
Yeah, we didn't want to wake the dog. Didn't want to wake him. We have to play with him again. He's only 2. So I'm going to totally change the subject on you, and give heartfelt sympathies and empathy and whatever out there to jeweler on the circuit, Hannah Long.
What happened? I don't know anything about
Hannah
this.
Long, over the weekend after Coconut Grove, had her car broken into and her entire jewelry bag taken.
Oh my God.
It's the worst nightmare that you can really come up with. The beginning of show season, and all of her jewels taken. And she's a fairly high-end jeweler as well. So
breaks my heart.
Breaks my heart. I mean, nobody's doing that to us. Like, I just can't. Like, it's a punch in the stomach, because it happened to 2 dear friends out in Portland a few years back.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. Janine, and I apologize, I'm going to butcher your last name, but at this point I've had so much coffee, I'd butcher my own. Decrescenzo. And Megan Clark, happened to them, had both of their jewelry taken at the same time. When they made a quick stop, they must have been followed, and they popped their the jewelry bags were in the trunk, locked in the trunk. They went into a shop. Boom. Taken.
Gone.
And so that happened to Hannah Long over the weekend. Folks, I don't know what we're going to have to do, but watch out for each other.
We really need to be sure our jewelers are safe.
I don't know how to suggest not to get hit. People are targeting, people are getting targeted. But just if you can, I guess just watch out for each other. Be kind. And I know I think there's a GoFundMe happening maybe, or I'm not sure what kind of insurance, but
there is a GoFundMe set up by our friend Betty Yeager, set one up for Hannah. So I will put that link in the episode notes. So be sure to check that out. My heart goes out to her. And if there's anything we can do as an artist community to help her and our other jeweler friends who are on the lookout, I mean, let's kind of band together and do what we can do. That's all.
Can I hold your bag while you go take a dump?
Okay, it's just been confirmed that this is not an AI version of Will that I'm speaking to right now. This is the real Will has entered the building.
It's analog, baby. It's me. It's the real deal.
All right, so, we've got Trey Taylor's part 2 this week.
We get into it with Selma and George Floyd and the history of racism in this country.
It's
and
good talk.
It's heavy. Gets a little heavy. Get into
heavy.
heart attacks, and that can make you, especially men, I've found.
Yeah.
I've known a lot of men that have had heart attacks now, and it seems like it really affects you. It really affects your emotional. You've seen the other side almost, and it makes you pretty emotional. So,
but the tough story and him bringing out the silver lining and all of it, that was for me the takeaway, because I'm feeling my own sense of silver linings coming about, and I think that even though we do get into these hard topics about race and mortality, that at the end of the talk, people are going to feel pretty inspired and ready to create and get out there.
Here is Trey and Helene Taylor from Selma, Alabama. This episode of the Independent Artist Podcast is brought to you by Zap, the digital application service where artists and art festivals connect.
So, Will, it's that time of year again when we all need to start getting stuff ready for taxes.
Thanks for that, Douglas. I appreciate that. We all do, quite literally. I did get an email recently from Zap. They were talking about doing line items and keeping everything together in one place.
Yeah, that's right. I tried it out for myself. So when I was logged into Zap, I went to my profile, And one of the options further down the page is to download your transaction history.
Amazing. That's after you've proven to them that you're not a robot by correctly identify the tractor before you play that lovely game.
So once you've identified that you're an actual human, it's super easy just to select your date range, and then it will create a report of all your purchases so you can hand off those booth fees and application fees directly to your accountant.
So you're floundering around in the woods and you've had to relieve yourself all over yourself in the middle of the woods and you're seeing snakes and you've gone through hell. What made you want to do it the second time?
Well, because Dante went to the Inferno, but he also went to Paradiso. And so I wanted to see what that's like. So I thought,
of course,
got to go back and do it again. So in 98, I went back. That time was just before I discovered art. And so I put together this kind of trip and went back to the ethnobotanical garden called Sachamama. So I made arrangements for another, this time a different curandero. And this time, and I actually even said, look, the first time was just terrible. And I said, if you can, I'd really prefer not to have to go through that experience again.
All right.
So we start off, we drink the tea, and then this was a little bit milder. He might have kind of like, okay, this guy, we better give him half the dose. But the thing I remember most about was hearing all those characters from the Looney Tunes. It was really just a kind of like animation. I don't remember any visuals as much as just hearing things. A lot of hearing hallucination type of things. And it wasn't unpleasant. It wasn't a profound experience. But what was interesting is that when I went back, I had an anthropologist friend of mine, and I told him the experience. He says, well, that's really interesting. You know, and I don't know if this is true. He says, but Walt Disney was with Maria Sabina. This may be an urban myth. And that's where the mouse came to him.
Oh, my God. That's incredible. I firmly believe in Mark Twain's never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Right.
So it's true as far as we're concerned, right?
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've read about ayahuasca, and I have not experienced anything like this. I've not done it, but it has been known to help people form new paths between certain things. So, for example, if I'm going through a hard day, and my first reaction is to go to pour myself a nice whiskey at the end of a long hard day, and then that becomes a problem, and then a crutch, and then you start relying on that. It has been known to help people find different paths around that or through it, or be even outside of yourself and recognize that crutch or that path. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's a great description of the tools that ayahuasca can be used as. There is a center in Peru, I can't remember exactly where, but it's in the Amazon basin. And they basically take people who have addiction problems, although they can be for a lot of different things, and they will have them for a week spend time in the hut by themselves. They'll bring them their food and then they'll leave, but they'll be doing ayahuasca on their own.
The whole time?
Yeah. Usually, I think it's at night when those rituals are administered, but during the day, they're to process what happened the night before. And it causes, I mean, if you call it a paradigm shift, it does. I like the way you described it. It sort of remaps the brain in some way. And this is, again, just things that I've read and heard about. So it has a lot of great potential to awaken people. Really,
and almost like a tool.
I think, I mean, there's such a problem out there with it being sort of a entertainment, like people are seeking for entertainment. And so there's a big problem with that. And then that gets into the whole thing about set and setting. And But if it's done in the right way, then people come to face themselves. That's, I think, the beauty of these things is you come face to face with yourself. There's no more running away from it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people taking it as an entertainment are trying to, that just goes with a lot of drugs or alcohol or anything, trying to escape something.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this seems to be, when used the right way, a way to face an unavoidable, maybe truth, if that's right. If that makes
it's
if I'm not off base.
It's ironic because you're dealing with hallucinations, and yet you're dealing somehow about the truth of yourself. I mean, it's a weird kind of combination of things. It's hard to even comprehend until you've done it.
Right. So you experienced both of those ceremonies, and they were completely different for you. But did you wake up from the second one with a similar feeling?
It wasn't as memorable as that first one, but I do remember after the experience coming back to San Diego, and within a couple of months, so that would have been in August, and on January 9th, I made my first painting.
Yeah.
I often think there was a clearing out. Yeah, this is kind of interesting. I remember before going down, I used to do a lot of meditating, and I remember I had this kind of thing I'd sit at, and it's a little altar I'd made. I remember having this experience where, as if I were watching TV, and I remember these doors opening and these two hands coming out holding a golden ball. I never really thought too much about it, but when I look back on it, I think, and it was real close to all of what this was happening. I can't remember if it was after the ayahuasca, but it was, there was this just series of these little, what seemed to be unconnected events.
Yeah.
And then discovering painting.
And this was kind of a vision that you had?
Yeah.
Like,
but it
while you're asleep?
Meditating.
Meditative vision. Gotcha.
And it was, that's about the only vision I can ever recall, if I ever even had it. But that one was so distinct. It was almost as if something's going to be given to you and it's coming. Yeah.
Brace yourself. Here it comes.
Yeah. So I went back to Japan as an artist. It was after I quit my job. I went back to Japan as an artist. But before I went back, I left San Diego, and I was in Birmingham where my family was living. And I thought, I'm going to run down to New Orleans and try to get some art in a gallery before I head to Japan. So I went down. Yeah. I went to New Orleans. I met this owner of a folk art gallery. He said, I like your art, but I only deal in African American and Haitian art. And I said, well, I understand. I said, where are the folk artists of this area? I'd like to meet them. He said, they're all dead, but I'll tell you where you can go see their art. He says, there's the Trés Lear African American Museum of Folk Art, and then there's the New Orleans Museum of Art. Well, I had made it a one-day trip, and I wasn't going to have time to do both of them. And I thought that first one sounds interesting, but it's going to be too hard to find. So how do I get to the museum? So he tells me, and I'm driving, and about 15 minutes later, I come to a red light on my way to the New Orleans Museum, and I see a tiny little sign. I mean, if I had not stopped, I wouldn't have seen the sign. It said the Trés Lear African American Museum of Folk Art. Turn left here. So I turned left, and it was just a block down. And I see that it's this raised cottage. It was an old house. And I open the gate, and I go up onto the porch, and I read about the museum. It's a little plaque. Right. And then on the right side of the door was the history. How historical homes have names and these plaques.
Right. Absolutely.
And so I read, it was something Goldthwaite House, and now my memory is failing me. I'm going to just call it the Trés Lear Goldthwaite House. It wasn't actually that, but Goldthwaite was in the title.
Yeah.
And so I was like, God, that sounds so familiar. the hell is it? So let me just walk off the porch and see what I'm looking at. I walk off the porch, turn around, and then finally I realize I'm staring at the house my mother grew up in that my grandmother owned.
Oh my God. That's that's incredible.
Yeah. So at that point,
and how long? I mean, at that point, how long had it been since you'd been back?
So my mother she grew up obviously in New Orleans, and she used to take us when we were kids to show us these houses that she grew up in. And so I had visited that house years before. I think it was abandoned, and we walked around in the courtyard and just, and then I realized leaving biochemistry and taking on this crazy idea of, well, I love painting so much, I'm prepared to starve if I have to, right? But that was a confirmation for me that this choice was much bigger than just making the decision, well, I think it was driven by some kind of, I don't know, it's a strange thing.
It is, but it's connected, right? I mean, that's the whole connection. Everything has had a thread.
Yeah, and it actually gave me the confidence to know that, okay, this is a journey, and get on this magic carpet and ride it and do not look back,
Yeah.
And it has been that. I mean, just the stories. I wish we had a lot of time. I'd tell you some just incredible stories.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
So Tré and Helene, you live in kind of a hotbed of civil rights history and really just the deep South. You're there in Selma, Alabama. And when George Floyd was murdered and the community kind of exploded and the world caught on fire, you guys reacted to that. How could you not? But I feel like it started off almost with like a Facebook group of like, what do we even do, to some actual action. And I wanted to talk to you guys about your experience there in Selma and kind of the community outreach that you've done together to bring people together positively. So if you could talk to me a little bit about that, I'd love to hear more.
Well, so Tré did design and schedule a mural as a reaction to the George Floyd murder. And we did it on a pretty large wall in Selma. And we partnered with the police and the sheriff department.
Oh, wow.
And the idea was, we as artists, I mean, what can we do is what your question was. And I think one thing that we do and we can do is bring people together. And art is a fantastic bridge for that. All ages, all abilities can come to the wall literally and make art together. And so the mural was designed, it's called Coming Together. And the very first person to put paint on the wall was the sheriff.
Oh my gosh.
Of course he was doing it as public relations, and the perpetrator of Bloody Sunday was a sheriff. Of course, not this sheriff. And so that one stroke to me was huge. And we handed out stickers to kids, like badges for police and the sheriff department. And it happened to be at the time where mayoral race was happening. So a lot of candidates came and painted and brought their people. And it was just a beautiful experience. And then we usually do the murals just for the weekend. And it was probably pretty late on Saturday afternoon where we were like, oh, we should do a closing ceremony. And so I literally took a piece of cardboard and painted closing ceremony Sunday, 2:00, 4:00, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And I do keep a list of all the people that participate in the mural, or we do, because we write their names in the murals, which is
nice. As part of the artwork.
Is part of the artwork. So then I have this whole list of everybody that participated. And it was a little bit over 100 people. And the mural told a story about how the people come from the East and the West, and they come to Queen Selma. Selma is called the Queen City of the Black Belt. So we created a character named Queen Selma that Tré fashioned after a healer here.
Yeah.
And the mural told the story of people coming from the east and the west and bringing flowers, which she released in the river to restore the dignity of all. So we used magnolias, which are the symbol of dignity. And, I talk about a magic that happens at the wall, and often the story that we're painting comes alive. And that is exactly what happened. And so we decided we'll have this closing ceremony and we'll all throw flowers into the river together. Well, like I said, just a little over 100 people participated on the wall painting, and 65 people came back on that Sunday, which I'm always saying, where do you get 65% participation?
Right.
Spur of the moment.
Yeah.
But these experiences are infectious. And I also think that showed how much of a need there was for this kind of just joyful celebration and coming together. And people brought flowers, and we made kind of like wreaths out of just the kudzu next to the building. And it was all completely spontaneous. And we walked to the bridge. We have a pretty famous bridge, the Edmund Pettus Bridge, that crosses the Alabama River, which we're new Selma folks. And that Alabama River, it's wild. It looks like the mighty Mississippi if I've ever seen one. It's very, very tumultuous. It's got serious current. It's dark. They call it the Amazon of the South anyway, or is it Amazon of America? It has incredible diversity of fish and birds. Anyway, we walk up to that bridge. We're singing. This is all completely spontaneous. And we release these flowers into this mighty river. And I cannot tell you, personally, my experience was just, dumbfounded and so simple, right? I mean, we as a community came together to paint. That was our only goal, is to paint and hopefully do a little healing. And that's all we can do as artists, to me, is just create the access.
Right.
And
I mean, so many of us create our things in our studios by ourselves. And when it sounds like that you guys and Trey has done all his career, whether it's creating like, a Joker kind of piece of artwork on the corner of Japan on trash day, or getting out there, it's always been kind of a shared thing. And how do we do that as artists and bring it out of our studios? And you guys seem to have found some way to do that. And that's taken on a life of its own all around the entire city of Selma, right?
Yes, and this whole area, but it's so simple. I think we overthink things like,
yes,
oh, we need to do this and we need to do that. And honestly, somebody said, well, you can paint it on our building. And we're like, okay. And then somebody said,
nice.
I'll call the sheriff. And we're like, okay. And, they have their own energy. And actually, it's one of the things we've learned through this whole project that Trey's done, called the Revolution of Joy. We've done 9 murals through the Black Belt. And sometimes there's too many speed bumps or turns in the maze. And we've realized, like, if that's happening, if there's these bulkheads happening, then it's not going the right direction.
Okay.
And, you really have to kind of, go with the flow or whatever. But if, really follow how the community is working it. If that wall is too complicated, like there's issues, say it's on a busy street, or say this organization doesn't want to work at that wall because of this person and blah, 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 or stuff like that. Right. Then we realize, oh, well, then it's not supposed to be there. These
that
kinds
seems
of things.
like a really clear way to look at it. I was going to ask you, and this question may have a lot more to do with me than it does with you, but what kind of, are you running into any kind of cynicism with that, or has it all been joy?
We've had one particular critic of what we were doing. She's a well-known activist, and she's done some amazing things. She and her husband, I mean, the day that I met her, they were speaking for the Doug Jones campaign, which is a Democrat senator that was running. And they've done some really great things. But what I learned was activists have a really important part in our role and our history of moving forward. But they're fighters, and they have to fight. And we are community builders. So we put all that aside and invite everyone.
Right.
Peace was actually happening at the wall.
Yes.
But they couldn't see it. They could only see what was not there. And they were great teachers. That was a great teaching experience for us. And, out of 9 murals, if we've had one critic, and it didn't change anything.
No.
It was just,
Right.
And it was about inclusion. It was about inclusion. And I think we do the best we can to be as completely inclusive of the populations that we're working in. Selma is 80% African American, and we really respect that. We really
Well, it's interesting.
Our best.
Yeah, that you say that. If you've read, there's an incredible graphic novel series called March that talks about a lot about Selma, and they run into some of the same kind of roadblocks where you guys are running into that, where it's like, hey, we're trying to be super inclusive, and some people don't want to be necessarily inclusive. It's like, well, this person is the person that I've been arguing with for the last, however many years. But the project that you guys are doing, and I really admire where it is. Can you tell me where are some of the other murals that have gone up?
We just moved to Selma in December of 2020. And before that, Trey had already started this project, which is called the Revolution of Joy, which the project design is 20 murals across the Black Belt. And the Black Belt is this region of the middle of Alabama, is where the cotton grew. That's why it's called the Black Belt, really, because of the soil, and it's a band, probably Delta soil, I'm not sure. And there's 11 counties in the Black Belt, and 9 are considered the poorest in the nation.
Okay.
So it's a very impoverished area. So we were already here doing that project. And that's kind of the reason that we moved to Selma, because we didn't want to be outside coming in, but versus part of the community.
Right.
It's easier to be inclusive if you know your neighbors.
Yeah,
and,
if you know who you're including.
Yes. So it just made sense for us at the time of our lives and for this project. So we centered ourselves in community arts by moving to Selma.
On purpose.
On purpose.
Yeah.
So we've only done 2 Revolution of Joy murals in Selma. Another community mural we did with partnering with the city and the schools. But there's other ones in Marion, Alabama, Camden, Alabama, Utah, Alabama, Greensboro, and Greenville.
Wow.
And then this year we'll do one in Orville and one in hopefully Demopolis.
Wow. And really, intentionally tracing these steps of like civil rights and the movement of civil rights, or no, is this just happenstance because of the South and Alabama?
Oh, yeah, that's just happenstance.
Yeah.
That particular mural that you talked about that was really, right when we were moving to Selma, was intentionally to discuss the race issues and the unrest that was nationwide.
Right.
But of course, Selma is the center of a lot of that healing and, a lot of the injustices. But most of our murals are not socially minded like that. They're much more about something. Trey writes a little legend that has to do with joy, inspired by a unsung hero of that area. But we definitely want to bring economic development through the arts to this poor area of the South. I think that's more of our drive than the actual civil rights trail, just to be inspired.
Yeah.
That's what we're inspired
the inspiration
by,
of creativity, really. So, yeah, that's interesting. Just thinking about the history of that area, you can't help but land on places of historical significance, even if you're not intending to. Going down to Mississippi and being a walking cliche of the 50-year-old white man that loves the blues, and walking around and going to different areas. I went down and saw, and I've mentioned this before, but going down and seeing the different grave sites of Robert Johnson. And unintentionally finding myself on an Emmett Till trail, and I'm looking up and I'm like, oh, it's like, well, maybe Robert Johnson stopped here and got a Coke. And you're like, well, guess who else got a Coke here? And you read the placard, and it does open your eyes to this country and the history of what's happened and what is happening here. And I applaud you guys for stepping into that and trying to create a community within history and community within.
Well, it's the revolution of joy. So
Yes.
It's about the future. It's about hope. It's about community now moving forward.
Right.
And so, you can't be here without honoring and respecting and learning of the injustices
Right.
that continue. Absolutely. And, and I think one of the first questions you ask is, what can you do as artist? And that can be extremely daunting. And it's especially daunting right now because we're recovering from this tornado. And, we're a poor community when we've just been wiped out. It's just amazing. So what do? Well, we had a little meeting of creative minds just Saturday night. It's like, okay, we're going to make rebel art. Let's do it. People need healing.
Right.
And we need to come together and no one died. And that's what we need to celebrate. And we need to celebrate loss. I think that Selma helped us align our purpose, like Trés, there's all this conversations about looking for your purpose or looking for the truth. And Selma is just an instant opportunity for aligning your purpose with your job.
Right. Exactly.
with your job. So,
yeah. If you're lucky, then you get to do that. And
if you're lucky, yes.
You guys do. You guys got nailed by that tornado. Like what was the path as far as Selma goes? Just, I know a lot of people know about it, but just what was your experience and where did that land?
Well, I'll let Tré talk a little bit more about the experience because I was actually out of town, which was a good thing. I was just up in Birmingham, which is just an hour and a half away. So when got hit, I could go get a generator and flashlights and anything else I could think of. But we were in the path. Our house was hit by a tornado. We consider ourselves the lucky ones. We only lost chimneys and trees and a few windows. Of course, roof damage, but the house next door lost its roof and the house next door has its roof. And then the next house doesn't have a roof. Those tornadoes are crazy. They hop. We've learned a lot more about tornadoes than we've ever wanted to know. But our town has a wide swath of the root, which is truly unbelievable. And that's, you can stand in front of it. You can stand in front of the debris in the house or there was with a house and you can't understand it.
Yeah.
It's super heartbreaking. That's all I can say.
I'm sorry to make you
but
live that.
But one thing about tornadoes, there's a path on the left side of the path and the right side of the path are still fine. So you can still go to a bank and you can still go to your grocery store and you can still get gas. I mean, I didn't know what to expect as I was coming in. So I was filling up gas tanks coming in town. I was like, am I going to be able to get gas for a generator? I don't know, Yeah. So I've learned a lot more about natural disasters.
Than you ever wanted to.
Our town is really going to suffer. We're just at week 3. It's total chaos.
Man, I'm so
sorry.
sorry.
Super, super sad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What can anybody do to help? Is there anything that people can do to help? Is this a Red Cross kind of situation, or are there?
Yeah, we have everybody. We have Red Cross and FEMA. We've got a lot of resources, and I think the people's immediate needs appear to me to be taken care of. Like trees are off of houses, streets are cleared, and power is restored. But we lost a lot of housing.
Yeah.
So what's that going to look like? I drove through one of the worst hit neighborhoods today to show a friend, and they're a neighborhood. I hope that small houses are rebuilt instead of, large low-income housing compounds.
Right.
I hope our neighborhoods return. So I think what we need is investment. And if you have that capability, there's a lot of ways to invest with historic credits, historic tax credits.
Yeah.
So it's just what we really, really need is economic support in Selma. It doesn't need Selma is our nation's town. It
Right.
holds a lot of history and it needs to be supported by the nation.
Right.
And the way to support it is to, invest in it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it breaks my heart because you think about all of the different Black communities that have been neglected, whether it's in Michigan or Jackson, Mississippi or Tennessee. And it's going to take a lot of work for sure. I applaud you guys for doing what you can. Really, I don't know what else to say as far as that goes. It's almost like you don't really have a choice, though.
Right. Well, that's right. If we all do what we can, though, that's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do what you can.
Absolutely.
And also there's an open invitation to any artist who wants to come and share their gifts with Selma. We do have a really old big house that was spared by the tornado, and we would love people to come and stay here and share their gifts with Selma. These children, they need dance and drama and drawing and all of it, all the
Absolutely.
arts. Storytelling.
You guys have your house there in Birdland, and it's a little bit
Birdland.
of a gallery and almost like just a joining space, if you would, the way I see you guys there on Instagram. Or
yeah, we would love for it to be, cooperative. We have a garden and we can pick vegetables and cook our dinner. And, I hope that other people will come and just see Selma. Come see it. Come see
Definitely.
it and share your gifts with us.
Amazing. I appreciate that so much. Thank you, Helene.
Right.
And I might grab Tré on to close out a couple of our other things that we were talking about. I wanted to touch on this and part of your thread too, and the fact that you've been pretty open to experience. You experienced a heart attack not too long ago, and our community almost lost you. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that and how that makes you feel kind of on the other side. I know you've always lived your life with a lot of gratitude, but how does that dictate you going forward?
So that's been an interesting experience. That happened in 2020, 2 weeks before we moved out of the house to Selma. And I remember, I always tell people, the house, when we came down December 1st, we opened the doors and there's nothing, of course, inside the house. And we're both standing there with tears in our eyes. She's got tears of joy. I've got tears of fear. Like, oh my God, what have we done?
So much work.
So, yeah. And so I'm the kind of person who believes that the body can heal itself and, try to not use too much medicine, Western medicine, if you can. I mean, I'm not opposed to it. But now I'm given like 8 pills. In the beginning, it was very hard because I couldn't walk across the room without being tired.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of rehabilitate myself. And I did. I went through this cardiac rehab, but I also did my own rehab here. So we have 2 sets of stairs, and it was in the middle of winter. And so I didn't want to go walking outside. So I would walk up the steps, go down through the hall and down the steps. I would walk 4 miles in the house just to rehab, and that really helped. The first thing you experience is you can't believe it's happening, but then you realize you've just survived it. And what I had was called the Widowmaker, and I had what's called 99% occlusion. So and we were out hiking.
Oh my God.
We were hiking, and the strangest part about that story is I guess I had bronchitis and I was coughing. And Helene said, "Do you want to turn around?" I said, no, let's go on up to the top of this and get the view. And so I made it to the top, and we were sitting there, and it was so beautiful and peaceful. And I had this just strange thought that this is so peaceful, so lovely, so beautiful. This wouldn't be a bad place to die.
Oh my God.
I had that thought.
Yeah.
And there was a fence around a fire tower. This was a place I used to come to when I was a kid. We'd go camping. I just wanted to go and revisit this thing. I hadn't seen it in probably 50 years. And so there was this fire tower, and I wanted to go climb it. Well, I would have had to jump over the fence to get up, to do it. And I had considered it, and I thought, I'm not going to do it. Well, 5 minutes later, I'm walking down and having this terrible, this like, it felt like, it wasn't in the chest, it was in the arms. And it was as if like things were running up and down inside my veins or something. I turned around and I'm waving at Helene. She didn't understand. She's waving at me. And so she came down. I thought, I'm going to lay down on the ground and just rub my arms. I still had no idea what was going on. And as soon as I lay down, I thought, oh, no, whatever this is, we need to get to the car. And of course, we got to the car, and then she had the fourth.
You made it back then. How far out were you?
We were 30 minutes from the ER. It took 30 minutes. But she stopped. She had the foresight. There was a gas station on the way. She had the foresight to stop and get some aspirin. Like, she's thinking, just in case this is and that bought me time,
Yeah, she saved your life.
Yeah. There's some weird stories that come with this little incident. We sold our house to a couple that came down from New York, and a year later, a beautiful couple. I mean, he and I were starting to know each other. He was a drummer and she was a dancer.
Nice.
He has a heart attack in my old bedroom a year later. And that threw me into depression.
Did it really?
Yeah, I couldn't understand. That's where things began to come up. And I thought, okay, this is just too weird. Why did I survive? I had 30 minutes and I survived. It was just that kind of like, it was just that really threw me over the edge. And all summer, it was in 2021, summer 2021, I just could not get out of this just terrible thought of like, you start to really understand your mortality.
That's what I've come across with friends who have had heart attacks too, is that they're a lot more, they have seen mortality. They have seen, the end almost. And, they are a lot more appreciative, but also a lot more emotional,
Right.
Have you experienced some of that too? Just being more, I
remember in the beginning, I was so just gratitude for every minute that you're alive. You're thinking, there's just so much to be thankful for. And of course, life gets back to the way it is,
Sure.
And this will be now 2 years since it happened. I was fearful then. So you go into gratitude, then you go into fearful. I had to wear what's called a life chest for a little while. It shocks you. It's triggered based on, your EKG or something. Well, the damn thing would always go off sometimes. The warning would go off. Like, I remember I was holding the cat, and the cat tried to jump out of mine and shifted and sent off a warning signal. And I'm sitting there.
Here it comes.
And I couldn't remember how to turn the damn thing off. And you're supposed to, hit these two buttons at the same time. And I'm going to have a heart attack trying to figure out how to turn this off. Here's another little strange synchronicity that has to do with all of this. And that is, so I didn't do I actually canceled all these shows in the summer of 2021. I started to get into this fear, this idea of like, God, I've got to be careful or I'm going to have another heart attack. And so I just fell into this place of fear. And I remember telling Helene, she came, we were up at our little house up in the mountains. And I was up there I was up there painting. And so she came up and I said, I've decided I'm not going to do any festivals. I'm done with the festivals. I've got to take care of my health. And God knows festivals can be so stressful,
Yeah, right.
Running from
we
tornadoes.
know a little bit about that.
We know a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So, and she's, of course, horrified, like, well, how the hell are we going to support ourselves? And I said, I hadn't figured that out yet. And so we have this river across the street. And I said, let's just take a break. and let's go for a swim. And so I went into the bathroom, and I have this little vial that I carry. It's nitroglycerin. And most of the time I remember to bring it with me.
Yeah.
But in this particular case, I saw it sitting up there and I'm putting it on my base and I said, oh, I better take this with me. So I put it in my pocket and we go across the street to the river. I jump in and I thought, oh my God, I forgot to take it out. So I get out of the water, I take it out and I put it up on the bank. Helene gets in the river and we're just sitting there floating around. And all of a sudden she goes, huh, what is this? A glass vial of nitroglycerin is floating
What?
down the river with someone else's name on it up to her. And I said, you see, you got to take this seriously. That is a sign.
Yeah.
And she was just freaked out, And
I
said,
bet.
and so we went up, and I was now feeling really like, okay, I'm really getting off of that's clearly a sign for both of us. We need to get serious about this. Well, 2 weeks later, a friend of mine comes up, and he was living here in Selma at the time, and he was a wonderful woodworker, but he's also a minister in training, or he trained he trained in a theological in seminary.
Yeah.
So that was kind of his path, was looking to,
Right.
And so we're sitting there and I'm telling him the story and I said, and it just confirmed, I need to get off of this thing. And he starts chuckling and he goes, that's not the way I see it. And I said, how do you see it? He says, I see it as I got your back, get back to living. And that was what I needed to get out of that fear base. Like, oh my God, I'm looking through the glasses of fear.
Yeah.
And so I went back to work, and 3 weeks later, I think we were at La Quinta or something like that. But pretty much that whole thing with the heart attack it is a roller coaster, but I feel like I've gone through the worst and I guess the best of it all, if there is,
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to me that you did get there, because that's not how. I only know you a little bit, and what that is wide open. That experience, that kind of open to living and open to life. And I remember we had dinner, had plans to come up and meet, and it was you and Helene and Daryl and Signe and Genna, and Susie and I were going around the corner to meet where you guys had said to go, and we see you guys leaving. You disappeared and kind of took off for about an hour, and it was just a super casual dinner, but we thought it was right around that time that we were supposed to meet. Once you did join us, you're like, well, it was really hot and we had to go sit in the river. And it was like, it was such a great thing. I loved that, and it really summed it up to me. It was like, well, this is who this is, this is what he's all about. It's like, well, they had to go sit in the river, and it's like, well, God damn. And since that point, we definitely have had moments where we've just gone and sat in the river instead of being on time, or, fuck it, who cares? On time, it's like, well, you were a much better version of yourself from having gone and sat in the river than you would have been had you not been, right? I mean, so it's like that's the kind of living that I aspire to be. So,
well, thank you. It does kind of get us into trouble, and I remember we had a really good time together that night with all of us.
We did, yeah.
We talked a lot
maybe
about,
we wouldn't have had such a good time had you not.
Who knows?
River, right?
Who knows?
Yeah. But it's necessary, and I love your voice, and I love your stories. I love the fact that you're still with us, by God.
Thank you,
man.
Thank you, Will,
and living wide open still too.
Trying.
Yeah. Well, come see us in Santa Fe. I said this I don't know if you heard me say this to your better half there, but if there's a chance for a dinner in there with the very famous T-Bang, if you can pull him away from.
Then from all the publicity that they're giving her.
Love to have him on the show, but I don't know if we can get him anymore.
He's too famous now.
He is.
Well,
I love you, buddy.
I love you too, brother. And I look forward to, seeing y'all. We'll text you and let you know when we're coming through.
Please do. If it works out, we'd love to see you.
Yeah.
And, I understand it's always a time crunch, but love to see you.
Sounds great.
All right, brother. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with all of us. And we've got all the pieces and parts, and we'll see what Douglas comes up with.
Bless his heart, man. He's got a job ahead of him.
He does. He's going to kill me. All right, brother. Talk to you soon.
Right. Thank you, Will.
Bye now. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
All right, well, I'm not going to kill you. That was a really good interview. So thanks for talking to Trey and Helene. It was a great talk.
We had a good time, man. And to be honest, you probably still had to cut 30, 45 minutes of technical difficulties and this and that. And I appreciate those guys sticking with us and giving us a really, really good talk. So I had a lot of fun talking with them, and I can't wait to see both of them and give them a big hug on the road.
Yeah, I love the part when she was talking about doing the mural in Selma and how the sheriff stepped up and made the first stroke, and they partnered with the sheriff's department, because this is the thing that gets to me. This is my issue. When some people have a hard time at looking at the past and just acknowledging the pain. We've talked a lot about empathy on this show, and having empathy for somebody's experience and their history is needed. For that sheriff to say, I didn't create the problem years ago, but ceremonially I can act as a symbol to try and acknowledge what was in the past, So I thought that was really powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was very powerful. Great talk and great work that they're doing down there in Alabama. So, it's interesting. We never really talk about appropriation on this show, and I don't know if it's a topic that we want to broach, but sometimes it's hard for older white folks to have that empathy, to not necessarily, or to know where to show it, Like I remember when the statue of Robert E. Lee, that I grew up with, I took my kids down to it, and people just decided they'd had enough, started marking up the statues, and be like, you know what, it's time for these to go. And I took my kids down there and did a little tour, and they thanked me for the lovely tour of the F word. But it just, it was interesting to go down there too by myself and see some of that. And as a middle-aged, post-middle-aged white guy, to be standing out there and looking at it and seeing history take place in front of you. And this was more of a violent kind of, this has to go, we're going to rip it down kind of demonstration, as opposed to the more of the love and community that those guys were doing. But I'm standing there looking at it like, just wow. And, some young dude just doing a slow circle around this 3-story statue of Robert E. Lee. He's looking up at it, and I'm looking up at it too. And it's a person of color who's driving the car. He looks up at the statue. He's like, gives a middle finger up in the air. And then he looks at me and sees me and gives me some of that too, and I'm like, yeah, that's fine, man. I kind of deserve it too, and history is what history is, and I can take some of the shrapnel.
Sure.
So it's interesting to see this time and to live in any time, but man, hats off to those guys for taking it in a positive place, and hats off to the people in Richmond for taking it in the place they did too. It's just, it's time to grow. It's time to move on.
It is. The other big thing I took out of this talk was his advice or his experience of putting fear behind and moving forward in life, hopping on that magic carpet, taking signs from the universe and living this life of taking risks and taking chances. That it's really an encouragement to get back to living. And that's what I'm taking away from this talk.
I don't know. This is a risk-taking business that we're all in, Right. I mean, we can die in a car wreck. We can jackknife it. You mentioned Martis early on. Our good friend Michelle Martis had one of the more horrific traffic accidents. It's been almost 10 years now or more, on her way somewhere around Atlanta, I remember hearing about this, but she jackknifed her truck and trailer. You never know when it's going to end. So that's, I think, why we were all chomping at the bit during COVID, too. It's already a matter of risk that we take every day. And it's just one more thing that we've got to throw into the thing. It's like, look, my jewelry bag can get stolen. I can get in a car wreck. I can break my leg. I can have a heart attack.
Tornado can go down the street. I mean, the list is endless.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You can zero. You can spend all your money and then take a zero on the chin. So it never knows. We're all used to gambling. It's a gambler's business, my friend.
Is.
So, yeah, all you gamblers out there on the road, thanks for tuning in to the show week after week. And we still are enjoying doing it as long as you continue to enjoy listening to it. And thanks again for all your support.
We appreciate it. Have good shows, everyone. We'll see you down the road.
This podcast is brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. That's zapplication.org. And while you're at it, find us on social media and engage in these conversations.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when we release new episodes.
Oh, and if you like the show, we'd love it if you would give us your 5-star rating and offer up your most creative review on your podcast streaming service. See you next time.